WildEarthTV, you are live.
Welcome to Safari Live, North Landing Elementary School in Virginia Beach, the US of A. My name's Brent Leo Smith. I've got Gerard on camera, and aren't we excited to take you on a live safari? Just now, Viam and Jamie are going to be out as well, and he's disappearing, but there is the big bottom of an elephant there. Let's try and move a little bit. What an exciting way to start your safari, except he is not being the most kindly elephant. I can just make him out through the bush there. Let me see if I can find a little gap. But he's not hanging around, unfortunately. But I am on my way to a waterhole where I'm expecting to find, hopefully, lots of elephants. And I'm really excited to get all your questions. Now, this is not the first time we've had North Landing with us, and you guys always give us the best questions, so keep them coming. So when we see an elephant bull like that moving away, it means there could be other elephants really close by. So I'm just going to have a quick check. Now, isn't this amazing? You guys are sitting at school, and instead of a normal class, you're coming on a game drive with me, and I'm really happy to have you with me. So anything you guys have wondered about the African bush, if you want to know about lions, leopards, elephants, hyenas, if you want to know about birds, snakes or spiders, please send your questions in to me. So this morning there were lions and leopard in this area. So I'm hoping, apart from of course the elephants, we might be able to find one or both of them before you guys depart. Hopefully both, but at least one would be fun. And if you see me putting my head off the car like this, it means I'm looking for tracks. And that's one of the ways we find animals, is by looking for their footprints. And we try to follow their footprints to where the animal might be. I can actually smell elephants, and Gregory's actually asking questions about elephants. So maybe we're going to track some elephants with my nose today. Gregory wonders, why do elephants have tusks? Now, tusks are modified incisors. Incisors are those teeth on the side, but I'll keep talking about them in a few seconds, because we have the first decent sighting of an animal to show you. Here we go. That is a kudu, a greater kudu, and it is one of the biggest antelope we have here. Here we go, look at him. And he's a browser. And what a browser means is that he eats leaves, he doesn't eat grass. Now that's a young male, they can get much, much bigger than that with their horns. Now, unlike deer, which you get in America, antelope's horns don't fall off once a year. They're there for their whole lives unless they break them. And he's having a nice little afternoon snack. It's probably morning for you guys. It's just after 3 in the afternoon for us here in Africa. And it's a hungry, hungry kudu. You see his big ears. Now those are specially designed to listen out for lions and leopards. So you can see how he moves them around, and at the moment he's actually listening to me. So he's making sure that whatever he can hear around him isn't a danger, and he'll move and swivel the ears all over the place. And kudu have very big ears because they live quite often in thick areas of bush, so they can't see when the lion's coming, but sometimes they'll hear it before it gets close. There we go. That's our first decent animal sighting. Going to keep going, and hopefully we're going to find some bigger animals or some kitty cat. But Gregory was asking about elephant tusks and why do elephants have tusks? Gregory, so I said they're modified in sizes, and sizes are your front teeth here. Now, they've been modified for fighting, and there's only two reasons animals evolve certain characteristics. One is to find girlfriends, and the other is to get food. In this particular case, the elephant's tusks do both. They can use their tusks to peel bark off the trees to eat, but they also use them to fight so they can get some girlfriends. So elephants are the biggest animals out here in the African bush. They're the biggest living land mammal in the world. Jackson's wondering, do they hunt? They don't, Jackson. We'd be in big trouble if they did. They eat trees and grass and fruit, leaves, bark. So they don't actually eat any meat at all. Your predators eat meat, and the biggest predator we have here is the lion. And they're the second biggest cat in the world, after the tiger, who lives in India. So we're heading towards the waterhole, and Bella's wondering, have we ever seen a baby elephant? We have, Bella, and they are very cute, and I'm hoping to be able to show you one, or maybe Jamie will find one for you. But there we go, we've got some elephant tracks, and they're heading down the road. I'm going to try to see if I can show you a nice track. The road's a bit hard here, so I think we might get lucky at the waterhole. There might be some elephants there. Good time of the day is to look for animals around the waterhole. And who knows, Bella, maybe there's a baby elephant waiting for you there. So you can see I'm looking carefully here. There's some thick bush with a dry creek bed there. And that's always a good place to look for leopards. They like to lie on the edges or even in the creek bed sometimes. Okay, we're about 30 seconds from checking the waterhole. Once we've finished checking the waterhole, we're going to jump across to Jamie, who's on the other vehicle. But 1 second, here we go. What could be at the waterhole? I see some animals. There we go, some buffalo. My buffalo, I'm not sure whether they're as good looking as Jamie's buffalo. So let's have a quick look at mine, and let's go have a look at Jamie's buffalo at another waterhole.
Oh, I'm not too sure about my good-looking buffalo and if they're any better looking than Brent. But a very warm hello to all of the students at North Landing School. It's great to have you on board on our live safaris. My name is Jamie, and this afternoon I have VM sitting behind me doing all of the camera work and showing you all of these amazing things. So you've been briefly introduced to buffalo. Let's have a little bit of a closer look at what we've got here. I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 buffalo bulls right in front of us, looking particularly relaxed on this windy winter's afternoon. It's lovely and warm out here, considering that it is right in the middle of our winter, but the buffalo are taking advantage of all of the sun that is shining down before the temperature starts to drop and it gets cool once again. Now, they may look like cows, but you definitely shouldn't confuse them with them. Buffalo is a very wild, very interesting animal. And these groups of males, these are all boys, all of these buffalo bulls, these groups of males can actually be quite grumpy when they want to be. especially if they find that their personal space is being interrupted by somebody else. And Bella, welcome to the Sunset Safari. You were wondering about how we're safe in these safari vehicles without being attacked, since it's nice and open. Well, the answer is the biggest way that we make sure that we're safe is to always respect the animals, to always remember that they are wild animals, and to constantly be watching what they're doing. Luckily for us, most of the animals out here have grown up from the moment they are born until whatever age they happen to be. They've grown up with safari vehicles wandering about, driving past them, and they basically ignore us like we're not even there, like we're not an important part of their day. Sometimes baby elephants come up and play with the vehicle, try and scare the vehicle away, but they are just playing. But it's very important for us to remember that even though we know the animals and we know that they're comfortable with us, make sure that we never take that for granted. So we're always watching what they do. And speaking of that, and speaking of watching animals, there is a big animal lying in the dam itself. And if we have a closer look, I know he's hidden behind some logs, so he's difficult to see, but that is a hippo. Now, when I first drove up here, I was a little bit closer to the waterhole itself, and he immediately got up and started showing me signs that he's uncomfortable with me. Now, I don't know whether he would have charged at us or whether he would actually have run away from the vehicle. But either way, it's important that we read those animals' body language, and that we recognize the message that we're giving them, or that they're giving us. Since we are in their home, not the other way around, so I just wanted to give him plenty of space. And of course, he is close to 4,000 pounds with huge canine teeth, modified teeth that could slice through anything. It's important to remember that I've got to give him plenty of space. They're also very, very fast. Now, Hannah, you were wondering, since Brent had buffalo at the waterhole, and I've got buffalo here at my waterhole, why is it that the buffalo are always at water? And the answer is buffalo are what's known as water-dependent animals. What that means is that they need to drink at least once a day in order to survive. So a buffalo doesn't do well in the desert situation. They're adapted to being in places where there is a permanent water supply. And in this case, there's not very much of that around, but especially these old bulls like to go and lie in the mud. And Drew, you were wondering, what do buffalo eat? The answer is buffalo only really eat grass. And at the moment, there's not much grass either. We're going into our winter season, into our dry season, and it's also a drought, which means that there's not too much in the way of food for all these buffalo, and they have to move and cover huge distances to eat the grass that they need to survive. They're enjoying a dusty afternoon. They don't look too stressed, but you do get herds of 400, 500 buffalo at one time. While we're looking at them, you have a nice chance to look at the buffalo's greatest weapon, which is the horns on the top of their heads. Now, those horns are solid bone and really, really heavy. Oh, there's an elephant behind us. Let's move nice and slowly because he's coming up with a bit of attitude. Hello, boy. You snuck up on me. You're so quiet. No. Let's be nice, okay? Yes, here's a good boy. It's a young bull coming across to have a drink. He's thirsty as well. Elephants also, like the buffalo, really need to have access to water. Now look at this, because the hippo and the elephant are going to have something of an interesting confrontation. I think the hippo is going to get up and move. Yeah, the elephant's going to go chase that hippo away. Oh, time for a mud bath. Oh, good. The elephant didn't chase the hippo away. He's left him just in the corner of the waterhole, and he's now using his trunk to spray himself in muddy water. And there you go, you've got an elephant using its trunk in one of the most common ways that elephants do. Laurel, you were wondering why elephants have trunks. And there's actually so many different reasons and different ways that they use them. But it is an incredible thing, and it's something that is almost completely unique to the African and the Asian elephants. So elephants have trunks. One of the big reasons is because they're exceptionally tall. And in order to be able to drink, if they didn't have a trunk to transfer the water from the water hole to their mouths, they'd actually have to kneel down and put their mouth right at the entrance to the dam, which isn't an easy thing to do when you are a couple of 1,000 pounds worth of animal. In this case, this guy is probably, I would guess, at maybe close to 8,000, maybe even 10,000 pounds. He's still young, not the biggest elephant I've ever seen, but he's still pretty impressive. But that's one of the reasons elephants have trunks. They also need it to feed right at the top of trees. They can stretch their trunk right up. Yes, boy. He's going to go, I think he wants to chase the buffalo. Oh, no. Changed his mind, having a good flap. Look at him, he's covered in mud to help him cool down. Actually, Alicia, that answers your question about why elephants have rough skin. Well, that is one of the reasons, is because it sort of, all of the mud and the water gets into the cracks of the skin and helps to keep an elephant nice and cool, because it doesn't dry quickly. So the elephant can stay nice and cool, especially out here when it goes over 100 degrees. Chasing a bird. Silly elephant. Now is he going to go chase the buffalo? No? What was that all about, you silly boy? Coming to make sure everybody knows that he's the king of the waterhole. But also, the other reason why they have such rough skin is so that they don't get scratched or injured when they walk through the thick vegetation, maybe next to a river where there's lots of trees with thorns and other uncomfortable things. If they walk right up close and they didn't have thick skin, then they would get cut all the time. But these elephants, because their skin is so thick, don't need to worry about that ever. They're also very big, and I think he's going to go and think about chasing that buffalo again. And Braxton, you were wondering how an elephant protects itself. He's just showing everybody that he's the biggest, scariest thing here. Well, the answer is they're bigger than pretty much every other animal out here. The nice thing about elephants, of course, is that they also, for the females and for the babies, they live in a herd, which means they've got safety in numbers as well. Lots of adults to protect all of the babies that are there. The only thing that might hunt an elephant, apart from human beings, and luckily we don't have that here, that nobody hunts an elephant in this protected area that we're in. But the only thing that is a threat to an elephant, maybe, is a pride of lions. And even then, they only target the youngsters and the youngsters that are, so the babies that are away from the group or separated from the group. Because an elephant is really big and strong. They can hit things with their trunk. They've got those big modified teeth as tusks that curve out away from their face. So they can use those to stab anything that might be a threat. And they're just heavy. 10,000 pounds of elephant, if it stood on you, would be an excellent weapon. You'd be crushed completely. So that's the way that elephants protect themselves. Sometimes what you were seeing there, that young male who was chasing the hippo and the buffalo, he was doing that because he's just left his herd. He's still young, and he's only been on his own for maybe a couple of years at the most. So he still feels a bit vulnerable, and he kind of wants to chase things in order to remind himself and to remind the other animals that he is big and scary. But you could see by the way that the buffalo and the hippo responded, they didn't need reminding. Now what he did there was he covered himself in muddy water. I'll tell you a story about hippo and sunscreen at the moment. But a lot of the animals use mud to help to protect their skin from the bright sun, the very strong summer sun, which can get up to well over 115 degrees Fahrenheit here in summer. So that's what the animals here will do to help to keep themselves cool and protected, and also to help to catch any parasites and itchy things that, like ticks, that might be infesting their skin. Now, Drew, on the subject of sunscreen, the hippo also has something like sunscreen, and in fact, a hippo's skin is really sensitive to the sun. It's one of the reasons why our hippo is so grumpy at the moment and feeling a bit scared, is because he's constantly in the sun, which means that he doesn't have enough water, first of all, to feel safe, and second of all, to help protect his skin. What hippo can do is they secrete a red substance that used to be known as blood sweat, because scientists thought that they were sweating blood, but it's not blood at all. It is just a different type of sweat that has really special sunblock chemicals in it to help to keep it safe and protected when it does get stuck in the sun, like our poor hippo is here. Now, Quentin, while we're looking at the buffalo at the back and the hippo, and both of those species have birds landing on the back of them, except for that one where the bird flew away. But Quentin, you've seen some of the birds landing on the buffalo, and you were wondering what it is that they are doing. Well, those are called oxpeckers. We get two different types. We get a red-billed and a yellow-billed oxpecker, and those will hop around on the buffalo, and they will try and pick up any ticks that might be around the buffalo's more sensitive areas. I won't be able to because of the hippo, I won't be able to get you close enough to have a look at the ticks that infest buffalo, but they do have lots and lots of them on their skin. And the oxpeckers fly down and they pick off the ticks and they eat them. So they actually do the buffalo a huge favor by getting rid of all of those itchy, biting creatures that are infesting their skin. Sometimes they're a bit irritating, and as an oxpecker, they quite like the taste of ticks. So if there's any kind of a scratch or an injury on the buffalo, then they will peck away and keep it open. So anything like a scratch, the oxpeckers actually peck at that as well. So sometimes they're really helpful, and sometimes they make things even worse. Now, earlier on, most of our buffalo have now stood up and they're starting to feed as the afternoon draws to a close. But they were doing what's known as ruminating, which was chewing away at the grass that was coming up from their stomachs. And Christian, you were wondering, do buffalo have sharp teeth? They have very rough teeth. I wouldn't describe them as sharp like a lion's teeth might be sharp or a wild dog's teeth might be sharp. But they can nibble away. They are sharp enough to break the grass that they eat. And then they're very, very rough. They've got very well-developed molars that they can use to chew the grass a lot, over and over and over again, to help to break it down. And what we'll do, Christian, is if I see a buffalo skull somewhere along the way, then I'll stop and I'll be able to show you what a buffalo's teeth look like. They are really nice and sharp. Everybody looking particularly peaceful. I think it's time to leave our waterhole scene and go and see what else we can find out here. Investigate a little bit further on, maybe see where the other elephants are. So while we do that, let's jump on the back of the vehicle with Brent and find out what he's up to.
Wow, it sounds like you guys had an amazing time at that waterhole with Jamie. Elephant, buffalo, hippo. Aren't you spoiled? Oh, speaking of elephants, as we come around the corner, here's another one. Hello, big boy. He's giving us the sniff. So this is a big elephant bull. Oh, watch, he's going to move that whole big tree. So what he's doing is he's moving the dead tree to get to the grass underneath. And because he's so big and strong, he's able to do that. and no other animals have managed to eat that grass yet. So what we've been doing is we've been going around looking for lion and leopard tracks. Look at how strong he is. Just rolls the dead tree out of the way. Now Quinton's thinking faster than me, or thinking the same as me, because I was about to tell you how big elephants got, and Quinton was asking that question. Oh, clever boy, Quinton. So they get to about 14,000 pounds in weight, and can be, if I remember my feet conversions correctly, they can get about 18 foot tall. Could be a little bit less, maybe it was 17 feet. But what's a foot or two when you're that big? Sorry, I'm lying it completely. My conversions are terrible. They get 14 to 15 feet tall at the shoulder. So if we look right at the top, that's the highest point of an elephant there that I'm showing you now. And that's 14 foot tall. And you can see his big tail to keep all the flies away. I'm just going to move forward a little bit so you can have a look at his tusks. So you guys are left or right-handed, depending. So elephants are the same. It's okay, big boy. Hello, mister. Here we go. And this particular elephant, he is right-tusked. You can see his right tusk is a little bit smaller, a little bit shorter, and it's been worn down. So that's the one he uses to feed with the most. So he's a right-tusked elephant. Hello, mister. So with big elephant bulls, quite often they will lift their heads at you, shake the head at you. Now, we're quite close to him. We're probably about 14 feet from him, about as far as an elephant is tall, maybe a little bit more. And Hannah's wondering how fast an elephant is. Can they run fast? They can. They can run much faster than a person, Hannah, even faster than Usain Bolt. And they run probably can get up to about 50 or 60 kilometers an hour. Now, if we look carefully on his face, especially between the tusks there, you can see there's a little cut. There we go. And if we go up a little bit, just below his eye, there's another little cut. Now, we were talking about elephants' use for tusks. Those are from fighting, both those scars on his face. His skin is so thick that not even the biggest thorn in the bush can go through it. But another set of elephant's tusks can do some damage to him. So those are definitely from fighting, and he was probably fighting over a girl. Here we go. You can see the slight difference on the tusk closest to us has been worn down. Here's their big ears. Now, Jackson's wondering, are elephants camouflaged? Well, not really, Jackson, but they don't really need to be because they're so big. Normally, you want to camouflage yourself to protect yourself or to make it easier for you to catch something. Now, an elephant being so big, and once it's an adult, there's no need for camouflage. There's nothing really that's going to attack him apart from other elephants. And they can smell and hear each other from a long way away. And we look at those massive ears, like big radar dishes. You got a little bit of a shock there when I said radar dishes. But that big ear is used to push as much sound as possible into his ear hole there. And you can see that got some hair there just to protect. And Arrow was wondering why they have big ears. So Arrow, there's two reasons. The other reason is it's an elephant's AC. It's their air conditioning machine. Now they can have about 2 gallons of blood in their ears at one time. And when they flap their ears, it cools that blood and cools their whole body. So that's why, another reason they've got those big ears. And what the tree he's eating at the moment is very thorny, and you can see it doesn't bother him at all. Now, he's a nice, relaxed boy, probably around 30 years old. Jackson's wondering, why does the elephant look angry? Well, at the moment, he's not looking too angry at all, Jackson. Look, he's smelling us. That's what he's doing. He's giving us a sniff, making sure we're not a problem. But he's not looking very angry. Elephants show very specific signs when they're angry, and he's not showing any of those signs at the moment. One of the more important, subtle signs to look out for with an angry elephant is their tail. If their tail starts getting a little bit stiff, or they start sticking their tail out, that means they are angry, and his tail is nice and loose, and he's happily eating away, so he's not worried about us at all. Now, he's chewing on really sharp thorns. Now, the inside of an elephant's mouth, the best way I can describe it is it's tough as an old boot, very strong old leather. Yum, yum, yum. Now, the tree he's eating, we can eat as well. It's called a buffalo thorn. It's a tasty little fruit, and you can even add the fresh young leaves into a salad. Caillou is saying, how do I know which tusk is for feeding and which tusk is for fighting? Well, if you have a look, both his tusks are for fighting, but the one he uses for feeding is generally slightly worn, and so it's a little bit shorter normally, and it's not as sharp, but he'll use both tusks for fighting, but only normally one for feeding. You get some very talented elephants that can use both. Ambitusked, like ambidextrous. Okay, mister, you continue munching. We're going to go see what other animals we can find. And before we disappear completely, that elephant looks like he's enjoying that buffalo thorn so much. I've got a buffalo thorn of my own over here, and you can have a look at those thorns that elephant was eating. So you can have a look at these thorns. They are incredible. So you can see it's got one straight big thorn and one hooked thorn. Now, and he's just munching straight through all of those, but we would get very stuck on that. But now there's some nice young fresh leaves over there. Let's pick them. It's the elephant's having such a good time eating them. I think maybe we should as well. Do you want to leave? There we go.
Thank you.
So a little game drive snack while we're out in the bush. Some buffalo thorn leaves. So while I go see if I can find another bush snack, let's go see what Jamie's up to.
I think a bush snack sounds absolutely wonderful. Liam and myself have brought fruit along for the ride, just to make sure that we're nice and fed up as we go along. So we've got pears and bananas and apples and all kinds of things to keep us well stocked. It's important not to go hungry out here. And then, of course, it's always important to carry plenty of water with you as well. And Drew, you were wondering, while we go searching for different things, if we have snakes in this place. And we do. We have lots of different species of snakes. Now, hands up if you're frightened or if you're afraid of a snake. Lots of people are, and often for a good reason, because some snakes have very strong venom that's capable of hurting a person, and in some cases, with the more dangerous snakes out here, even killing them. But it's really important to remember that snakes are far more afraid of us than we are of them, and that no snake is going to go out of its way to catch and to try and attack a human being. It's only when people try to catch them or make them scared that snakes attack. So we've got lots of different snakes. We've got the famous black mamba out here, one of the fastest and most venomous of snakes, and we've had a few really, really good sightings. The thing about winter, though, is that a lot of the snakes go into what's called estivation. That's like hibernation, but they only do it when it's dry, and which means that they do it in our winter time. But doesn't mean that we won't see one, because they do come out, especially on hot afternoons like this afternoon, or maybe when there's a couple of drops of rain. They do actually come out to bask in the sun and maybe catch themselves some food. So we get rock pythons and cobras, puff adders. I even woke up the one day, I was having a bit of a nap in between because it was summer and we wake up really, really early in summer. So I was having a nap and I woke up because a snake was actually crawling into the bed with me, looking for a nice, comfortable spot. But it wasn't too scary, it wasn't a dangerous snake at all. And as soon as I sat up, then it slithered off the bed and went and hid underneath my shoes. And we do see lots of snakes, and if you want to go looking for snakes, places like this dam are a perfect place to start. Maybe in some of the old trees that we get. And I know that Brent was talking about a buffalo thorn with you. I'm going to stop and show you this tree that's in front of me, because it's one of my absolute favorites. It's called a leadwood tree. And the reason why I love leadwoods is, first of all, it's a good place to look for snakes and other such things. But second of all, the amazing thing about a leadwood is that it can grow for a really long time. It's called leadwood because its wood is so heavy that when you put it in water, it sinks instead of floating. And they've done some testing on leadwoods that show that they can live for hundreds and hundreds of years. And even after they die, because the wood is so heavy and so dense, even after they die, the leadwood wood trees stay standing for also, again, hundreds and hundreds of years. Which is why in this country it's illegal to cut down a leadwood even if it's dead. In this case, the leadwood is still well and truly alive, but it is one of my absolute favorite trees and just one of the many amazing things that you can find out in the African bush. Well, unfortunately for the students at North Landing, it's time for you to go about the rest of your school day. I hope that you've had an amazing time on safari and that we get to see you once again. So enjoy the rest of your day, and bye-bye from our side. It's amazing how muscle memory works. For our regular viewers, hello once again. I'm just going to introduce myself again, since we have been gearing the safari towards the kids at North Landing. But hello, my name is Janie, and this afternoon I have Viam on camera with me. And as you can tell, we are on our makeshift Mahindra that I have for some bizarre reason decided it needs to be called Maggie. I'm taking a unilateral decision here. I'm probably going to get pilloried for this when I get back to camp, but this is Maggie. I have decided that that is the case. I feel as though Maggie the Mahindra gets utilized so frequently every now and again that she is deserving of a name at this point, and she has treated us so very well. Goodness, everything's changed. But Maggie the Mahindra's keys are on the other side to the Land Rover keys, which means I keep reaching to turn on the engine on the wrong side and having to correct myself. It's amazing how that muscle memory gets embedded into your daily conscious. And Twin Dams, also known now as Twin Lakes, has been renovated, which is why the road, oh my goodness, it's also why it's so dusty here. So while we escape the dust and various things, let's go across to Brent to find out what his plans are.
Now, this morning we had great non-success in trying to find the Tsalala Pride. So fingers crossed that we're going to have a little bit more luck on the Sunset Safari. So I'm just taking a little bit of a wider berth from where they were lost this morning. I'm still confident they're somewhere in that block. So I'm just slowly heading my way there. And then I heard there was a leopard found after drive on our boundary. But inside Sibambili, and I'm hoping he decides to come south. So we did mention that tigers a little bit earlier on the safari, and of course they don't live out here. But Andre is wondering whether I think a tiger would survive out in the African bush. Now, it's a very good question, Andre. I'm not sure. They generally tend to live in slightly more forested areas with a lot more water. So I'm just going to turn this radio down. Well, the flies are attacking already today, but I think the biggest problem with the tiger, it might be outcompeted, because the big predators here are all social predators. So they're in groups, whereas the tiger's a solitary predator. So it'll be a very, very interesting thing. And where lions and tigers both occur, in India, the lions and tigers actually live in separate parts of the country. There are no tigers in the Gir Forest National Park where the lions are. So it's one of those probably questions that has been asked many, many times, and there's no definitive answer to. Survive? Maybe not. Don't think so. I think it might be a bit dry and they might get outcompeted. I'm being mauled by tiny little flies called stable flies, and if you don't get them before, they bite, and they actually bite quite sore, and they suck your blood. Evil little buggers. Oh, I got him. There we go. Now, it's always important to check these game paths like this. You can see it's a nice big path caused by elephants. Always good to look for tracks on such things. And unfortunately today, no cut tracks on that one. This time of the day, lions are more than likely going to be in the deep shade. It's nice and warm today, 28 degrees Celsius, which is I think 80 something Fahrenheit, so 82 Fahrenheit, so really nice and warm. And this is what we call winter, by the way. Well, winter's afternoon at least. The temperature is going to drop quite quickly once the sun dips down below the western horizon. South Africa is a really big country. Well, not really big if you take it in the States, but it's, on African terms, it's quite a large country. Lots of diverse habitats. And Pamela's wondering whether our fruit is imported from the US or from the UK. You'll probably find, Pamela, you're far more likely to find South African fruit in the UK and the US than the other way around. Actually, not far from here is a big fruit producing industry. Citrus, mangoes, macadamia nuts. What else do they farm around these parts? Tomatoes, yes. Largest tomato producer in the southern hemisphere is just up the road. ZZ2. And they export a lot across. Oh, hello. Nice big herd of impala. And I saw something else behind the termite mound. Did I? Oh, my eyes playing tricks on me. No, I did. Nice kudu bull. So we saw a young kudu bull at the start of the safari, and there's a big boy there at the back. Ooh, he's feeling a bit shy, heading off into the bush with the impala. Off he goes. Nice little impalas. They're also heading off into the bush, so we're going to keep looking for lions. Now, if you're new to Safari Live, or you've just stumbled upon this and you're going, what am I looking at? You're looking at a live African safari, and there's two of us out here trying to find you the most amazing animals in Africa. And hopefully we're going to keep doing that for the rest of the drive. let's go see what's happening with Jamie on the other vehicle.
I'm currently driving along Leadwood and just checking to see, I don't know, Leadwood sometimes gets forgotten as a road. People forget to drive along here and double check whether there's any tracks on this particular part of Djuma. So that's where we are now, and while we were with Brent, I was just chatting to Mike from Cheetah Plains to find out if there were any updates from his side. Now, unfortunately, given the makeshift Mahindra, we won't be able to go across to that in that direction, but he did tell us that it was very quiet on Cheetah Plains as well, and we don't need to go rushing off in that direction. He's on his way to Torchwood to follow up and see if he can't find Inkanyeni. Inkanyeni is a female leopard that I have yet to see somehow. She keeps managing to just escape me, and at the moment is outside of our traverse area, but she's got 2 young, gorgeous little cubs, and hopefully he manages to, track distraction. Hopefully he manages to relocate her. Oh, okay, that's definitely not going to be very exciting. It was a hyena track that was roughly the size of a lioness track. We have some absolutely enormous hyenas here, and it's nice to know that they're still wandering about, even if they have moved the den site away from our traverse area, which I'm particularly sad about because the hyena den was my happy place, and it seems as though they have abandoned us for now. Hopefully they won't be gone for too long. That being said, I'm going to keep checking some of the older den sites over the next few days. I think I'll check 1 per drive, just to make sure that none of the other females in that clan have given birth to new cubs. It's distinctly possible at this point. And because of the age difference, they might have decided not to have their cubs in the same den as the older cubs that we've been watching over the last few months. Maybe. It's possible to tell, but we'll see. I'm really hoping, I think it might be wishful thinking on my part, but I'm really hoping that will be the case. Wonderful question coming through from Elaine, and I'm having a good chuckle because I actually completely forgot about this. Last night, Liam and myself spent a very enjoyable 3 hours with the Nkuhuma lionesses before they decided to go into some really thick and dense vegetation. Little waterbuck, making life very difficult. Let me try get a gap up ahead. Not really. Sort of. Can you kind of see it from there, Liam? Sort of. Well, we better watch it since we've gone through the effort of trying to see it. Unfortunately, the little waterbuck feeling a little bit camera shy. That's it. Viv says that's the end of that. So yesterday, that was sort of how our lion sighting went. The moment they got up, they went straight into the densest vegetation imaginable and proceeded on to Simbambili, where they killed a waterbuck. They were looking very, very hungry, and we knew that they would be hunting. However, on our way to attempt to relocate them, we discovered a pile of, or several piles of planks or lumber that had very clearly fallen off a truck at some point on the main access road. And I was just having a jolly good chuckle at it last night because I was imagining the poor person getting back home and realizing that they'd lost an entire load of wood on the drive back. But Elaine, yes, the mystery of the missing lumber was solved. It was in fact our lumber, as in Wild Earth's lumber. We're in the process of building and expanding and doing some interesting things around camp. And the poor guy he was actually coming in, he'd just picked up that delivery, and he was coming back towards the camp, and he was because it was dark, he was too scared. He knew he was losing the planks, but he was too scared to go back and pick them up. He didn't want to do it on his own. He wanted to go and collect some company first and then go back and fetch them. So by the time Liam and myself were heading home at the end of the sunset safari, we did encounter the hapless owner of the lost lumber, and he was on his way back to collect it with some company. And I mean, you know, fair enough, because although he didn't know it, there were hungry lionesses wandering about that area. So he was right to be a bit wary of jumping out and fetching and reloading all of that stuff on his own. Poor guy. Shame, man. But you'll be happy to know the lumber was reunited with its owner and is now being hammered into what looks like the frame for the veranda of the new final control building. Would be my guess at what that's going to be. I like that idea. On the subject of our missing hyenas, they're not really missing, they're just not where we can go and see them. Bethany, you were saying you think that we should perhaps give a map of our traverse area to the hyenas. Long wait, sorry, I got concerned about the aerial, but we're actually fine. We must take a map of our traverse area to the hyenas so that they can pick their spots a little better next time. I completely agree with you. I think it was most inconsiderate of them to disappear away from where we could go and watch them. And I miss them terribly. But it's always a positive to know that they will be back at some point. I don't think they're going to be gone for too long. The central part of Djuma is such a perfect spot for the hyena clan that lives here, and it's so central to their territory that I don't think they're going to be gone for too much longer. I'm just really hoping that is the case. And on the subject of hyenas, Debbie in Vancouver, you were wondering, with the males and females, which is larger? The spotted hyena is one of those unique, completely different animals in terms of their genders and their reproductive strategies. Now, the female is invariably larger and more dominant than the male. She has high levels of testosterone and androgen. I do that every time I say that sentence. Testosterone and androgen. So she's got very high levels of male hormones and is invariably right up to the sort of 20 to 30 kilograms heavier. And that's between 40 to 60 pounds that a female hyena is larger than the male. And she automatically takes a more dominant role over him. She's always, even the lowest ranking female hyena, and hyenas do have a very strict hierarchy, but even the lowest ranking female is higher in status than any of the males. And it means that the males have to be particularly cautious when approaching a female for a mating opportunity. They tend to get, if they do get rejected, they get well and truly rejected, often with snaps or bites. Speaking of hyenas, James showed me the most incredible video just before we went out on safari of a hyena that had two paralyzed back legs that was around, I think it was one of Kevin Richardson's hyenas. And this hyena had learned to walk on its front legs, not in a handstand or anything like that, but it basically, obviously with the incredible abdominal strength, tucked its back legs up and under, close to its chest, and then walked like that in a pose that would have made yoga masters around the world exceptionally impressed. It's phenomenal to see just how resilient these amazing animals are. And it does give us hope that that poor hyena that we saw getting mauled with Scott a couple of weeks ago by the other hyenas of our clan, it does provide plenty of hope that it would still be okay. Unfortunately, as we're driving along Drakensberg, it seems as though we might have strayed too far for our intermittent radio communication, so I'm going to try that one more time. I know it was a question from Sandy in Florida. I just don't know entirely what it was. Try lifting this up. Lift the aerial into the air. I can't, I'm so tangled in my cables. Okay, Vien's got no comms at all, so he can't help me. And now it's gone crazy. Now it's just beeping at me. We might be talking to you, we might not. I'm just turning my radio off and on in the hope that it will rectify itself at some point. Oh, there we go. Here's the lovely voice of Kirsty McLennan-Smith in Final Control. I think she's saying testing. She might also be telling me that she's nesting. Or listing. Here we go. Debbie in Florida, I've got your question this time. You were wondering about Gendre's foot. Oh, Sandy in Florida, you were wondering about Gendre's foot and whether it's any better since you saw it in the tent. Now, for those of you who have missed that update, Gendre stepped on a rusty nail, had a tetanus shot almost immediately, but 2 days later woke up in absolute agony with his foot 3 times the size it should be, and has subsequently been taking enough antibiotics to quite possibly cure every infection he may ever have had. And his foot, Sandy, is getting better. He's gone back to the doctor again today. They've given him more antibiotics. It's a very nasty secondary infection. It's been incredibly unpleasant. I think it's been a great deal more painful than he's actually let on. It looks incredibly painful. His toes don't really move too much. However, the doctor does say, on sort of on the more hopeful track, he is very much on the mend, looking better. It's just a matter of time for him. And I know that it's something he's found incredibly frustrating, and we keep having to shout at him every time he wants to go out on drive. As with all of our cameramen, he is exceptionally dedicated. But he will survive, and he's had to deal with our own brand of very tough bush sympathy, which is there. It's just given through a mixture of sympathy and insults at the same time. But I'm sure he's going to be absolutely fine. Now we've stumbled into the middle of a bird feeding party. There's one of them in there. It's a hoopoe in the buffalo thorn. Can you see it there, Ben? He's sitting on the horizontal branch, the lowest horizontal. The buffalo thorn. Oh, there he goes. That's the one, yeah. No problem. There he goes. There's a whole bird feeding party. In other words, lots of birds of different species hanging around. And we're going to try and get you a good view of some of them. Unfortunately, I think it's going to be tricky in this particular part of Central. Why did you all fly there? No, they all want to remain as hidden as possible. And it consists of a whole load of species that are very much they're shy bird species. They prefer the thick and dense vegetation. So whilst they were all around there at one point, they have now all moved off. And there were a couple of helmet shrikes, some flycatchers, drongos, chagras, maybe even the odd aeromobola or two. They've all disappeared off. Okay, well in that case let us continue onwards. Oh, there you go, the helmet shrikes. Well spotted, VM. Let's try sneak up on them by rolling. Come on, Maggie. No. There we go. Oh, dealing with much larger, much heavier vehicles than we are. Aww, helmet shrikes. I fear we shall have to give this up. Don't know that it's going to work. Nope. Sorry about that, everybody. Birds don't want to appear on camera today, and I think it's partly because of this wind that is billowing about now all of a sudden. I hear tell of a horrifying cold front that's just hit the shores of Cape Town and is going to be slowly making its way up towards us. I think that this warm wind is the stirrings of that, the changing climatic conditions that are about to assault us. I think poor Kirsty's trying to talk to me once again. Sorry, Kirst, I don't know what you're saying. Okay, we need to start making our way back towards an easier comms place. While we do that, let's go and find out what Brent was doing off the vehicle and which tracks he was following.
So I did some Ferrari tracking. I walked quite quickly through this area where they think the lions went, and unless lions can fly, which I'm pretty convinced they can't, they didn't go that way. So we're going to go around now and check the opposite side of the block and the opposite direction that we were told the lions were going. Now, they might have spotted something, and that obviously can change their direction in an instant if there's something tasty around. And I'm still surprised. If they were coming this way, they should have definitely popped up for a drink at the Arathusa waterhole, which they haven't, which makes me tend to believe they've changed direction completely. So we're going to do the same. Still looking under all the little thickets, just in case. Okay. Now we better get tracks around here. Southwest, or maybe we'll check down towards Seep's Pan, have a look there, but first let's have a little squiz. What's it? The Arathusa waterhole. Also just, oh, there's an elephant. Okay, here we go. It's like a young Ellie bull. Let's go have a bit of a closer look. Now, there's an Ellie. Million Clown would like to know about the elephant's graveyard. I'll chat about it in a second. Let's just look at this in front of us. So there we go, a young Ellie bull right up against the Arathusa Lodge. And have a look. If you were sitting on the deck, you would have such a wonderful view. And I'm sure he was probably there while everyone was having their afternoon tea before heading out on game drive. It's incredible how quickly this water is drying. Now, as the water recedes, different plant species will grow, and you can see that elephant's taking advantage of the plants that are growing as the water recedes. And well hidden to his right, almost looks like a pile of mud, is actually a hippo. And we keep coming out. There we go, a little bit more. There he is. This here is back protruding. Is a bit more to the right. There he is, a little bit more. There he is. There we can see his little ears. Now, even though it looks like water there, you can see it's pretty much mud that he's lying in at the moment. So very, very little true water left as we head deeper and deeper into the drought. Now, if those lines are in the area, this is the closest water. So our Arathusa dam cam peeps, keep a close lookout. We're going to go see if we can find them on the other side of that block. Now, we're talking about the elephant graveyard. It is not true. It is very much an old wives' tale. Well, not an old wives' tale, it's actually an old man's tale. So the myth of the elephant graveyard pretty much started with, what's his name? Rider Haggard is the author. And one of actually my favorite books growing up, which was The Adventures of, it's a Journey to King Solomon's Mines, or King Solomon Mines, the first of the Alan Quatermain books. And a very, very wonderful story, but the elephant graveyard is a story. Elephants happen to die where they die. It is normally close to water though. Especially if they're ill or as they get older, they'll try to find a spot where they don't have to move too much to get water and food. So they do quite often die around water holes or rivers, but no such thing, I'm afraid, as an elephant graveyard. In theory, the lines have to be between these two roads unless we find tracks of them crossing out. So we're going to go very slowly along here. We all know that lions are great sleepers. They sleep for about an average about 20 hours of the day. And Cecilia is wondering which thickets are favored by sleeping lions. And in true lion fashion, Cecilia, the thicket that is most favored by a sleeping lion is the closest one. So the closest bit of shade, it can literally be the most pathetic looking little bush, and they will of that bush during the day. Just keeping a careful lookout. I don't want to miss any tracks. So I've driven through this block this morning. I've now walked as a properly good section of this block this afternoon. So they must be further to the west. The lions got the better of us this morning. I'm not going to let it happen again this afternoon. So while we continue to search through this block, let's go see what Jamie's up to.
While Brent searches for those lions, I'm just double checking around our suspected den site where we thought that the lioness had a den or we've been thinking that the lioness has a den for the last few days. I have to say, yesterday, when we were with the three Nkahuma females, I had to rethink a little bit our theory about the den site. Brent is convinced that he saw suckle marks on the lioness on the sunrise safari. Yesterday, I didn't feel 100% confident that I could see suckle marks on any of the lionesses that we saw. And we know it's not amber eyes. I was looking at the lioness with the twin spots on her nose, and she was the one that I suspected had the den. And I couldn't see any suckle marks, maybe because she'd been away from the cubs for a while, maybe she'd licked her belly a few times, or the others had licked her belly a few times. Perhaps that had disguised it. But her tracks haven't come back in this direction. And we spoke earlier about the fact that the Nkahumas have a buffalo kill in not a buffalo, sorry, a waterbuck in Simbombili. It does make me wonder whether or not she does have cubs. We'll have to see. Tonight I think will be the clincher. If she doesn't come back here tonight, then perhaps our theory about the cubs is mistaken and she has yet to have them. A nice peaceful scene. We've moved a bit closer so that I can hear all of your questions and comments as well. And at some point we will have to go back in order to do a quick technical change before returning once again. We've got some impala. They often overlook just because we see them all the time. But they really are beautiful, elegant little antelope. When I was a kid, I always wanted, before I sort of understood the notion of wild versus domestic, I always wanted a herd of impala in my garden to act as lawn mowers and gardeners. I always thought that would be a wonderful thing to have. And there was a house a couple of doors away from me that had pet blue duikers, which I also thought was a brilliant idea when I was a kid. Obviously now I know different. They're a little bit nervous. This wind is starting to pick up, so they're making sure that they're out in the open and checking around constantly for any potential threats. I'm slowly making my way north because there are lots of elephant tracks heading in this direction, and this is where that young bull headed. Mutual grooming and some solo grooming happening. Keeping each other sparkling clean. I always think that impala are one of the best, or they look like the best groomed antelope. And that is partly true. They do spend a great deal of time grooming themselves. They've also got specialized teeth for grooming. The lowest set of incisors is they're very loosely in their sockets. What that means is it forms almost a comb-like structure and allows them to sort of sift through their fur and pick up any ticks or other parasites or bits of dust that might have collected there. One has to wonder, though, at the evolutionary design that favored the idea of a well-groomed antelope. Something that happened that made the genetic program for loose incisors a thing that benefited impala as a species. And of course they've kept their design for many, many years, tens of thousands of years. They're one of the oldest species out here. It's incredible to think of. And while you look at these females that have just come through the rut, dodging and ducking and diving the males, they've just finished raising lambs to independence, and promptly, straight away, just like that, almost every single one of these females is now pregnant and will slowly be gestating the next generation of impala. Isn't that incredible? Essentially, from the moment that their lambs become weaned and able to survive without their care, comes time for them to mate and fall pregnant again. I have, in my own mind, a list of top 5 antelope. I'm afraid the impala I don't think make the cut, but a gemsbok does, a gemsbok or an oryx. And Bertie, you were wondering, is it true that we have gemsbok here still? The answer is no, it isn't. We don't have them in the Kruger National Park or in the greater Kruger National Area. They're much more of a desert-based species. If you go a little bit further to the west, towards the more arid areas, into the northwest province and then further west towards the northern Cape, those are the places where you will start to see gemsbok. I was fortunate enough to work in the Green Kalahari many years ago, and we would see gemsbok basically all the time, and they've definitely made my list of top 5 antelope. Much, much bigger than the impala, a tall, almost horse-like antelope in structure, with long, straight, spear-like horns for both males and females. So in contrast to the impala, where only the males have horns, the female and the male gemsbok have horns, and they are surprisingly vicious in terms of their, well, not so vicious is the wrong word perhaps, but they can be surprisingly defensive, and it makes sense when you think that they often live in areas without any kind of cover at all. So they need those horns to act as a defense for keeping predators away from themselves and away from their young. And I was witness to a phenomenal fight between two males, which is actually quite rare. Not like the impala, where at this time of year the males fight almost constantly. And the gemsbok fights between males are rare. It seems as though the solitary dominant bulls that one sees all on their own are usually the ones that take the pick of the females. But it is something phenomenal to witness. Where I used to work, they were capturing a group of, or several different species of antelope to move to another reserve that was starting up elsewhere. And some of that involved corralling the antelope and putting them into large trucks, once sedated, and moving them off the property into a new reserve where the populations were being re-established. And I'll never forget the day that a herd of gemsbok was brought in, and one poor hapless springbok, which is the size of the impala that you're looking at now, one poor little springbok found itself caught up in this chaos and inside the truck. And the men who were capturing these antelope went in there with these enormous metal shields while the gemsbok were charging and bashing them. And what they do is they go down on their front part of their legs, and then when they get a charge, they lift themselves up and they throw themselves in a sort of a downward motion with their horns facing straight out. It's terrifying to witness. And these men managed to get their way into the crate with these huge metal shields, not hurting the animals, just keeping them from hurting them, and managed to lift this poor little terrified springbok out and set it free, and off it bounced into the distance. A very lucky escape of that gemsbok. Okay, let us continue on, go and see what's happening around Galago Pan, whether there's any tracks of lionesses there. And Caleb, you were wondering, while we leave our impala herd, how much an impala weighs, since they do look so light to pick up. And they do look incredibly light. They look delicate, I think, is the best description. You're looking at one impala weighing a bit more than perhaps you might expect them to. So between 100 to 120 pounds, maybe even 130 or 140 pounds for a very big male. So they're small antelope. They're small enough to be classified as rams and ewes, but still a significant weight when you think about what our incredible leopards do. So I know that Steph this morning was doing a sort of a reconstruction of the process that Karula would have gone through to hoist an impala into a tree. Just imagine picking up at least 100 pounds, let's say that. Let's say if she removed the stomach contents and had eaten a little bit, she was left with a carcass of 100 pounds. Now imagine putting that in your mouth, so in your jaw, nothing else can help you, you can't use your hands, and then using your fingernails to climb up a tree, dragging that into a tree itself. And you get an idea of just how incredibly powerful leopards are. Pound for pound, I know this is maybe a risky proclamation, but I would say that percentage-wise, in terms of their weight, leopards are actually stronger than lions. But it's just because lions are much bigger that they take the more dominant role. But I think that if you were to shrink to stretch a leopard to the size of a lion, they would be much, much stronger. Phenomenally powerful creatures. Much more brittle. That's true. If I stretched one, it would be very brittle. So yes, that's the rough size of an impala. Nyala's a bit bigger, a bit stockier, which was why that moment when one of them jumped through the Liam's personal car window and onto Brent's lap, it was a first of all, it's the most bizarre situation I think I've ever heard of, and I've heard of some strange things happening. But also why it actually wasn't, at the end of the day, it wasn't all that funny, because it could have gone terribly wrong. Thank goodness it didn't. But an 80-kilogram female antelope landing on your lap with sharp flailing hooves, and it certainly did considerable damage to poor BM's car. And then managed to get away unscathed. And hello to Wild Earth Girly, who has a fantastic name, username. You were wondering on the subject of the different antelope, whether or not we get tsetse antelope where we are. The answer is, in theory, yes. They could occur here. They are in the Kruger National Park. In fact, Brent and myself saw a couple of tsetse in the Shingwedzi area the last time we went to the Kruger, which was now a while ago, 3 months ago at this point. But we did see some tsetse. Now, they prefer a more open area, so we're less likely to see them here. However, it's not impossible. And particularly with the drought, I think that it's going to change depending on how long this drought carries on. I think that it's going to start to shift the dynamics of the antelope distribution. So we've spoken about that possibility with the sable moving in for, or being seen in this area on the dam camera for the first time in 17, 18 years of this reserve's history. We know that they're around in coral regularly, but they never have moved that far west. But I think tsetse are also a possibility in terms of what kind of impact the drought could have on us. Now at tsetse, we actually see their cousins pretty much every single day, and that is a wildebeest. So a wildebeest falls into the hartebeest family, as does this tsetse. And they're all all of those animals, the red hartebeest, the blue wildebeest, the tsetse, they've all got those sloping backs, which very clearly tell you that that animal is built for stamina and for speed. And the tsetse, all quiet, very quiet here. Nothing at the Galago Pan. Yes, tsetse is the fastest of all of the antelope that you could see here. I would love to see one on these live drives. And while we look at the empty water holes and the fact that everything is drying up, Marcel, you were wondering about anthrax and whether I could tell you a little bit about how anthrax is formed. So Marcel, you are right in that it is connected to very dry conditions. It is not necessarily connected to drying of water holes though. So anthrax is a bacteria, but it's a very, very clever bacteria. It's a very efficient, almost predatory bacteria that is capable of forming very hard capsules, making itself into what is essentially a spore that can remain dormant for up to 200 years at times. It's usually less than that, but it can remain dormant up to 200 years. And is usually in the soil itself or on the plants. Now it's when the animals start to scuff and to move about in the dry season, they start to dig at the absolute closest possible growth shoots close to the ground, that anthrax really does start to form, and it's in the dry seasons that we see it more often. A drought is perfectly favorable for anthrax to come out of its state of dormancy and to spread. And it's usually eaten by grazers or browsers as the drought continues, and immediately infects their bodies. And there's a couple of different places that it can take hold, either in the lungs, it's most frequently in the pulmonary system, occasionally in the digestive system. Just go through there slowly, but watch the antenna. It will also occasionally go to the brain, or you can even get an anthrax infection on the skin. And that animal tends to die relatively quickly. It's got a high mortality rate if left untreated. I think it's around 80% of infected animals will die. And almost immediately, once that carcass is on the ground, things like vultures will come and settle on the carcass. They'll feed on it. Predators will feed on it. And where the connection to water is, Marcel, is vultures in particular. They feed on the carcass, they collect the spores, and the first thing a vulture will do after it's had a meal is to go and search for water, first of all for a drink, and then second of all to have a jolly good wash and a clean of its feathers. And while they do that, they wash and they spread those spores into the water holes, and they spread from there. The fascinating thing about this is that within a couple of hours after an animal has died from an anthrax infection, the typical decomposing bacteria have actually outcompeted active anthrax bacteria completely. So the active anthrax bacteria has a very limited lifespan once it has killed its host. And it's only because it forms spores as quickly as it does and immediately goes into that dormancy state that it can be passed on and is actually such an effective bacteria. It's a clever thing, anthrax. It is a naturally occurring disease out here, but it will be one of the reasons why, as it starts to get drier, you'll find a certain reluctance from all of us as guides to actually interfere in any way or to fiddle with any carcasses that we can't see why they have died. Here's a big Ellie bull. I think he might be our friend from earlier. There's the DRC.
You can see your car there, Jamie.
You can see my car. Apparently we can see my car as well. So there's my little car. Just the back of it. It's a bit dirty. A bit dusty at the moment. But while we go and see if we can't relocate our elephant friend, we'll also return to camp ever so briefly. Let's go back to Brent, find out how this search is going.
Slightly more positive than last time. I had tracks of one lioness running at full speed, and they should come out here if they didn't stop in the block. Now, we're the only people looking for the Tsalala lions this afternoon, which makes it a little bit difficult, because of course I can't spend my whole afternoon walking around. So it should be around here, no, maybe even a little bit further. But the problem with a lion running at full speed is it might have crossed the road and then it'll just leap across while they're running at full speed. You won't even see a track. So the only reason I saw those tracks is because I was on foot. Of course, you're much closer. You're walking rather than driving. And I saw him while I was on foot as well. So if we go to where's that tree? That big tree there? I think it's that one. No, sorry. In the scap here. Zoom through it. There he is. I saw him while I was walking as well. You can... Oh no, where's he gone now? Of course he moved his head. There we go. Okay, so there we go. You can see his head there. Now while I was walking through the bush, I saw that Ellie bull